Hi, it's me, Waffles, and the stuff that you can see behind me is not the stuff that you would usually see generate in a normal Minecraft world, and that is because I'm not in the overworld or the nether. I'm actually in another dimension, because if you look at my debug screen, you can see in the top left that I am in a dimension called WB worldgen tutorial instead of Minecraft the Nether or Minecraft Overworld. I know this doesn't look that great, but that's just because it's some random dimension that I threw together for the sake of showing you how to create your own dimension. So I'm sure that you can make something a billion times better than this. This is the first tutorial in my 1.18.2 worldgen series, and if you want to learn how to do custom worldgen, then make sure to look out for the next few videos that I'll be making. In this video, I'll just be going over the multi-noise biome source type, which is how both the overworld and nether are made. I'll show you how you can choose which biomes are in your dimension and where those biomes are. So as you can see, I am using Visual Studio Code, and I just have a folder open called worldgen 1.18.2. You can name this folder whatever you want, and that's just going to be the name of the data pack. If you've made data packs before, you probably know how that works. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, I recommend using it, as well as the Data Pack Helper Plus extension, and I will have both of those linked in the video description. So as always, I will have a download for the data pack in this video in the description if you want to check that out and look at it while you're following along with the tutorial. And I will probably also have some paste bins for some important things. And there should be a few more links in the description, like links to the Minecraft wiki to help you with some other stuff if you're struggling with anything. So of course, the first thing that you're going to need for a data pack is a pack.mc meta file. I'm just going to create a new file and of course name that pack.mcmeta. Of course, you're going to need curly brackets and a quotation mark saying pack, colon, curly brackets, pack underscore format. This is going to be 9 because we are working with 1.18.2. And then description, you can make this whatever you want. I'm going to make it 1.18.2 custom worldgen. And if you've never made a data pack or resource pack before and you don't know what any of this stuff means, there should be an iCard up here telling you more about that. So then, of course, you're going to need a data folder, and then inside of data, you're going to need your namespace folder, and if you've never made a data pack or resource pack before, basically this is just going to be the short name for your pack that you're going to be using from now on. So I think I'm going to name this WAB worldgen, or Waffles Are Better worldgen. But you can name this whatever you want. Just remember that from now on, when I type WAB worldgen, you're going to put your namespace. Then, of course, keep in mind that this does need to be all lowercase letters or numbers and underscores. You can't put any special characters or capitals or anything. Then you're next going to want to create a new folder inside of your namespace folder called dimension. And then inside of the dimension folder, you're going to create a new file, and you can name this whatever you want as long as it follows the same naming rules for the namespace, so all lowercase letters or numbers and underscores. So I'm just going to name this tutorial.json. So the first thing that you're going to do is, of course, put some curly brackets and then in quotation marks put type. So this type is just going to be the dimension type file that this dimension uses. So I'm not going to go over dimension type files in this video, but I will go over that probably in the next video. And basically, dimension type just sets some settings for how stuff works in the dimension. But since I'm not going to be going over that now on how to create your own, you can use one of the 3 default ones, that being Minecraft Overworld, or Minecraft the underscore nether, or Minecraft the underscore end. And just depending on what you choose, that's going to decide like how fog works in your dimension, what the sky looks like, stuff like that. As I said, you can change that later using a dimension type file, and I will go into that in the next video. So after this, you're going to want a comma, and then you're going to want to put generator and a colon, and then some curly brackets. And the generator section is basically just telling the game how your dimension is going to generate. And then inside of that, you're going to want to put biome underscore source, and this just chooses the biomes that are going to be in your dimension. This is again going to have a curly bracket. Inside of that, you're going to want to put biomes for a list of biomes, and an empty square bracket for now. We will put stuff in that in a minute, but I just want to create the basic file first. After biomes, you're going to want to put type again, but this time instead of being the type for like how stuff works in your dimension, this type is going to be the biome source type, and that is going to determine how your biomes end up generating in the world. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is the multi-noise biome source type, and so that's going to be Minecraft multi_noise. This is the same type that both the overworld and the nether use. This can also be fixed, checkerboard, and I will go into those in a future video. For now, as I said, we're just covering the multi-noise biome source type. Next, I'm going to put a comma, and here you're going to want to put seed, and the seed is the seed of the dimension, just like how you have a world seed whenever you create a new world. It determines how biomes and stuff is placed. So I'm just going to make that 0 for now, which should make it the same as the world seed, but I think there's currently a bug that it doesn't do that and it just sets the seed to 0, but they might have fixed that, I don't remember. After that, you're going to put settings, and this is going to be the noise settings file, and so this part determines how your biome physically looks, like how all of the terrain is generated, how steep everything is, stuff like that. Again, I will be going over that in a future video. For now, I'm going to use the default one. There are actually several of these. The one I'm going to use is Minecraft Overworld. There are some other choices. You can also use Amplified, which gives you an amplified world. You can use Caves, which gives you a cave world. You can use End, which gives you a world that's shaped like the end. You can use Floating Islands for a similar floating islands world. You can use large_biomes for exactly what you would think it is. It has larger biomes. You can use nether as well, and that will just give you the nether generation settings. But for now, as I said, I'm just going to go with overworld. And then there is one last thing we have to put in. There needs to be a third type setting. So here we have the biome source type, here we have the dimension type, and here we have the generator type. And so what the generator type is going to be is, it's going to just determine what kind of dimension you're getting. So this can be, let's see, Minecraft flat, or it can be Minecraft debug, or it can be Minecraft noise. And so I'm not going to go over flat or debug in this video, I'm just going to be going over noise, and then within the noise type, I'm only going over the multi-noise type. So just to clarify, if you are using the multi-noise biome source, you do need to be using the noise generator type. So if you want to use multi-noise, or fixed, or checkerboard, or the _end, like I talked about earlier, you do need to have the noise generator type. If you have the flat generator type or the debug generator type, then this whole section is completely different. And again, I will go over both different generator types and different biome source types in the future. So for now, this is really all we need, except of course we don't have any biomes, and so the dimension can't work because there are no biomes for it to generate. So now we need to go ahead and add some of those. Before we go any further, I would like to take a second to look at the nether dimension just to show you how it can be slightly different. So you can see that the file is basically exactly the same. However, the nether uses the nether type instead of the overworld, and it uses the nether settings instead of the overworld settings. And so that means that all dimension files look basically the same, but most of the differences besides the biome source are in separate files, which makes things a little bit more organized. And if you're wondering where I got this nether file, there will be an iCard linked up here talking about how to get all the default worldgen files and stuff. So that includes all the dimension files and also the dimension type files and the noise settings files. Everything that I talked about earlier, as well as all of the biome files, which I will be talking about in a minute. So going back to our file, you're going to want to create a curly bracket inside of this biome section to hold all the information that you're going to need for your biome. Inside of the curly brackets, you're going to want to put parameters, and then another curly bracket, and we'll put stuff in there in a second, but until then, a comma, and then biome. And this is just going to be the name of your biome. So say I wanted to make the Minecraft ice spikes biome generate. This would just, of course, put the ice spikes biome in my dimension. And after you have the biome down, all you need to do is put in some parameters to determine where the biome will generate in the world. So the parameters that you need to put are erosion, and let's make this 0 for now, depth, and this is going to be 0 for now. I'm going to turn this into 0.0 actually, because that is how the game puts it. Weirdness, and then that is also going to be 0.0. Offset, temperature, humidity, and then lastly, continentalness. I think I spelled that right? Yeah, I did. Okay, so that's also going to be 0.0. So before I do anything, let me just explain what all of these things are supposed to mean. So erosion is how much something has been eroded, I guess. I guess mountainous areas would have less erosion, and like stuff like plains would have more erosion. I'm not 100% sure if that's how it's used in the game, because there's so many values, it's hard to compare all of them, but that's just what I would assume. So depth would be for elevation, so things with negative depth, I think, would be lower down, and positive depth would be higher up. Weirdness is just, I guess, some random value about how weird something is. So I personally would put like the Mushroom Islands at a high weirdness value and plains at a low weirdness value. Offset is how likely something is to occur. So for example, if you have a higher offset, then it is much less likely for a biome to show up because it'll be more specific. I'll get more to offset later. Temperature is of course temperature. Humidity is how wet something is, so oceans would have a higher humidity and deserts would have lower. And then I think continentalness is how much something would be part of a continent. So for example, I think plains would have a higher continentalness and the mushroom fields would have lower continentalness because they are generally islands. But again, I'm not 100% sure on that. And the thing is, none of it really matters because none of these values actually have anything to do with what they're named. The names are basically completely random. Every one of these, besides offset, corresponds to a different noise map. And I will explain that in a minute. All I'm going to say right now is that every one of these numbers at the end can only be between -1.0, so -1.0, and +1.0. That is, except for offset, which can only be between 0.0 and 1.0. Alright, so now let me explain what all of these values actually do. So, for one thing, you specify more biomes just by copying this whole section, and then pasting it below, but changing this to the name of another biome. So let's say I wanted this to be mushroom fields. I now have two different biomes that can generate, and then for example, if I change this to 0.5, and this to 0.0, since they now have two different values, they will generate in slightly different places, which means that you will get ice spikes and mushroom fields in different places now. But to understand what changing these values do, you're probably going to need to understand how all of this works. And I explained this in the video I did for 1.17, I'm going to try to explain it more briefly here. Basically, when creating a world and choosing where biomes are going to be, the game makes 6 different images, one for each of these settings: erosion, depth, weirdness, temperature, humidity, and continentalness. And it uses, I think, Perlin noise in order to generate some random splotches of different shades of black and gray and white. So just thinking about erosion. So I will put an image on screen right now, and if you look at that image, you can see that there is white, there's gray, and there is black. So looking at that noise map, which is on screen, the places where it is completely white correspond to values of 1, and the places where it is completely black correspond to values of -1, and anything in between would be the values in between. So for example, perfectly gray would probably be 0. So imagine that there was just one noise map. Assuming the noise map was for erosion, if I set the erosion for ice spikes to be 1, and the erosion for mushroom fields to be -1, anywhere where there is white on that noise map is going to be ice spikes, and anywhere where there is black on that noise map is going to be mushroom fields. Anything in between will be whichever biome most closely fits that area. So if it was anything between white and gray, it would be ice spikes, and if it was anything between black and gray, it would be mushroom fields. And so the way the game works is it generates 6 different noise maps. One for erosion, weirdness, temperature, humidity, and continentalness, where the black and white parts are in different places. So say that I now get another biome. So let's just make this the plains, and let's say it has the same erosion as the mushroom fields. So I want it to generate in the same place as the mushroom fields, except, so to visualize this, there's actually a handy tool created by Mesode. So if I just type in Mesode data pack generator into Google, it will come up with Mesode's data pack generators on GitHub. I'm going to go to worldgen, and then I'm going to go to dimension. And let me just get all of this code for my dimension. I can then just paste it into here and press this little play button, and it'll show me a map of my world. I can zoom out, so I can hover my cursor over areas. You can see that this gray area is ice spikes, and the pink area is mushroom fields. And you can see that I think about half the world is one and half the world is the other. And what's great about this is you can see up at the top right here all of the values for each one in the same place. So right over here, you can see there's a temperature of negative 0.81, humidity of 0.12, continentalness of negative 0.45, an erosion of negative 0.38, and a weirdness of 0.59. So if you look at this, remember, the erosion for ice spikes is positive 1, and the erosion for mushroom fields is negative 1. Every number to around 0 will be mushroom fields, and then it'll switch over when it gets near 0. Okay, I just realized something really cool. I'm almost done recording the video, and I didn't realize this until like just now. But if you press this button in the generator, you can actually see the noise maps it's using. So I'm definitely going to be using that from now on. So each of these maps is used by a different one of these values. So to show that the noise maps are different, I can go back here, copy the mushroom fields biome, and then paste it again below. And this time, instead of changing the erosion, I'm going to change the weirdness. Actually, first I should change this to the plains. But anyways, gonna change the weirdness for the plains to 1, and the weirdness for mushroom fields to negative 1. So what we should see is that ice spikes will be generating at exactly the same place, so ice spikes will take up half of the biome map, and mushroom fields should still be generating in the same place, except half of the mushroom fields should be replaced by plains, because plains will generate at 1 on the weirdness scale, and mushroom fields will generate at negative 1 on the weirdness scale. So I can copy all of this again, I can paste it into the code box here, and then press play. And yes, as you can see, all of the ice spikes are in the same place. However, if I zoom in, you can see about half of these areas, which used to just be mushroom fields, are now replaced by plains. The overworld has, I think, 7,578 entries for biomes, because you can see it repeats the same ones over and over to get just like specific positions for specific things. But you don't need to make your dimension nearly that complicated, because the Nether only has 1 entry per biome, and it still looks pretty good. So one more thing I can do is just getting rid of this weirdness value. So if I set the weirdness back to 0 for both of these guys, it will reset. So now only mushroom fields or plains will generate. But now I'm going to mess with the erosion value a little bit. I'm going to put the erosion value for plains at 0.0, so that the plains will generate right in the middle of the mushroom fields and ice spikes. So if I do that, I can then paste that in, press play, and you'll see that plains generate between mushroom fields and ice spikes. But the problem is there are lots and lots of plains. So if I zoom out, you can see that plains are now the most common biome, because they take up just the middle of the biome map, which is where most of the values fall. However, there's another way you can fix this, which is just going in and changing the offset. So if I put the offset at 0.8, that's a really high offset, so that means the plains are much more picky about where they generate. So if I go ahead and zoom in, the plains now form a border between the mushroom fields and the ice spikes. If I want, I can set the offset even higher, and that would create more of a border. I don't think they'll generate at all if I set the offset to 1. Yeah, if the offset is 1, they won't generate at all. But I can set it to 0.99, and then they will very barely generate. Let's see, what's the best value? It seems to me that 0.93 is a pretty good value for getting it to just be the border. So then, if I change plains to a beach, and I change mushroom fields to... You know, I'm going to change mushroom fields to plains. Plains. And then I change ice spikes to ocean. You can probably see where I'm going with this. There we go. Now we've got a nice system of islands with beaches separated by ocean. And if you want, you can tweak this a little bit. So I'm going to make the erosion for the ocean slightly smaller. So say I put that at 0.7. It will now be a little bit less picky, so it can take up more of the space. So if I set that to 0.5, and I set the plains, I leave the plains at -1, and I set the erosion for the beach now to something like -0.7, and set the offset down to 3 maybe? No, that's way too high. Maybe 6? Maybe 4? No, it needs to be something like 5? Yeah, there we go. Now, they're much more like islands, and the reason they're much more like islands is that anything that's around -0.7 to -1 will be an island, and anything between about, let's say, -0.5 to +1 is going to be ocean, and since -0.5 and +1 have more values between them than -0.7 and -1, you're going to see that more of the area is taken up by the entry that has more values possible. So I hope that's a good enough explanation on how this stuff works. I'm going to go ahead and change all this stuff to the stuff that I just put in the biome generator. It's always better to experiment with stuff like Meso's generator. Of course, I will have a link with to this in the description. However, the reason that I don't just use Meso's generator is I like being able to understand everything that's going on here, because then I can customize it any way I want without having to rely on using tools like this. Before I test it, I'd just like to point out that if you would like to just completely copy the Nether or Overworld or End as your dimension, so you want it to just be a complete copy of the Overworld, all you have to do is just go into here, open the overworld file, and then copy the entire overworld file and paste it into here, and then you'll just have a copy of the overworld that you can edit if you would like. Also, lastly, looking at the overworld file reminded me that you can also have changeable values. Notice how in here there's just a single value, but in the overworld there is a square bracket with 2 values inside. Basically, what this means is it can be anything between -1 and +1. It basically generates a random number for that, I think. That's if you want to be super fancy, but this just works fine as well, and the Nether uses this numbering system instead of this random system. So if you just want to use the same system as the Nether, you might as well use this one. This is what I have always used for my stuff, just because I find it easier. I'm going to go ahead and change the ocean to ice spikes again. And then you should be able to see islands of plains within the ice spikes. And I'm also going to change the beach to the Nether Wastes biome. So I've gone ahead and put the data pack inside of my data packs folder. I'm then going to bring it over and click done. Now I'm going to create a new world with that data pack. This is the world that it put me in. All I have to do is /execute in and then WB worldgen tutorial, because WB worldgen is my namespace and tutorial is the name of the dimension. Run TP and then my current coordinates. And that should take me to the custom dimension. There we go. There are ice spikes here, just like there should be, because I specified ice spikes to generate in the dimension file. If I do /locate biome Nether Wastes, there should be one relatively nearby. Oh, right, I forgot there isn't netherrack on the ground, because that would need to be specified in one of the worldgen files, I believe, noise settings. But anyways, as you can see, there is a Nether Wastes biome bordering this ice spikes biome. Plains biome that borders the Nether Wastes biome, which looks a lot like a savanna, except for the sky. Then will it border the ice spikes biome again anywhere? I think the problem is that the biome is way, way too big, so it doesn't really have that much room to do that. But you saw on the image that it should do that, so hopefully you just believe me. Whether it looks good or not, you can at least see in the top left that this is a new dimension. And of course, I'm sure that you'll be able to make a much better version. This is just a really bad dimension that I put together for this tutorial. So that is all for this video. As I said, you can probably make a better version of a dimension, but this is just the one that I made for this video. If you look up Minecraft custom dimensions, I'm sure you can find much better examples to inspire you to make some really cool things. But since this is just the first video, I haven't gone over how to make custom biomes, or really how to customize your dimension at all, except for placement of biomes. So make sure to look out for my new videos when those come out. I do have some videos for how to do all this stuff in 1.17, if you haven't seen those, but a lot of those are a little bit outdated. So I'll be just remaking everything that is outdated. And if you have any questions about anything I covered in this video, then you can ask me in the comments or join my Discord server, which is also linked in the description. I hope you have an amazing day, and thank you so much for watching.